Welcome to Spirits Podcast, a boozy dive into mythology, legends, and folklore. Every week, we pour a drink and learn about a new story from around the world. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Julia. And Amanda, we are back this week with another Arthurian legend episode. I feel like I teased this the last time we had an Arthurian legend episode, where we talked all about Lancelot and how he's the best boy ever.
Yep, sure.
Just the best knight that's ever been, right?
Yep.
But we did also kind of touch on this thing. The stories keep involving him with women named Elaine.
Yeah, which has not gotten less strange to me since we recorded that episode. So I am very excited to see what the hell's happening with that.
It's weird, Amanda. I'm going to tell you right now. It's weird. I figured we could take sort of like, this is a full episode, but in my mind, it's like a sidebar to discuss the Elaines and why they actually play really important parts in the general mythology of Arthurian legends.
You know, I am here for an underrepresented woman, Julia, and I'm very excited to learn more about Elaine and Elaine and Elaine and maybe Elaine.
At least 3 Elaines we'll talk about today. Now, in my mind, reading more about Arthurian legend and sort of as we're going through the different themes of these different characters and everything like that, it's sort of unsurprising to me that there are these multiple different Elaines. If you think back in the episodes that we've been talking about, we've discussed several figures at this point that either share the same name but are parallels or opposites of each other. So, for example, when we talked about Guinevere, we talked about how there's like a true Guinevere, but also there's a false Guinevere that attempts to manipulate and be like, I'm the true Guinevere.
Yes.
We also have 2 men that are in love with Guinevere. We have Lancelot and we have Arthur. We have Uther Pendragon, who disguises himself and then claims to be the Duke of Cornwall so that he can seduce the Duke's wife, which is what leads to Arthur's birth.
That's right.
We even have 2 swords. Remember how Excalibur and the Sword and the Stone? Different swords.
That has been one of my favorite facts to tell people, Julia, when I talk about the podcast and what I learn on it.
Incredible. I love that. That's like our new age Cerberus means spot.
Exactly.
It's like, there's 2 swords.
Excalibur wasn't the sword and the stone.
So we have this sort of like important thematic doubling in Arthurian legend, where the stories both contrast each other and in doing so, I think, elevate each other, right? So today we are going to tell 2 contrasting stories about 2 different Elaines, and then I threw in a bonus Elaine at the end for us. So we have Elaine of Astolat, who is sometimes referred to as the Lady of Shalott.
Her I've heard of.
And we have Elaine of Corbinic, who is also sometimes known as the Grail Maiden.
Whoa.
Are you ready?
I am so ready.
We're going to start with Elaine of Astolat, who's also known as the Lady Shalott, who is best known for falling in love with Lancelot, but that love being unrequited. When she finds out that her love is not returned, she dies of grief, kind of classic.
Mm-hmm.
And then her body floats down a river on a barge where it eventually arrives in Camelot.
Wild. That's typically not how bodies in rivers work, but we'll allow it.
It's on a barge. It's okay. It's not like she's just floating down the river herself. This is not Ophelia in the river kind of classically done, right?
Well, Julia, Tennyson says, on either side the river lie long fields of barley and of rye that clothe the world and meet the sky, and through the fields a road runs by to many towered Camelot.
Well, Amanda, we are going to talk about Tennyson's opinion on this story. Don't worry. It's great. This image of the like kind of woman floating down on this barge, whether she's dead or she's like going to her death, is a pretty familiar image, I think, especially if you are a sort of classical art fan. It is an image that has been painted many times, particularly by the pre-Raphaelites. So she is a character that has found a lot of love, not only in the Middle Ages, but also, sort of unsurprisingly, in my mind at least, in the Victorian era.
Oh my God, Julia, she's the tortured woman who's about to die or has just died. Of course they love her.
And they especially love her youth. They love her, quote unquote, pure love by Victorian standards. And they love a tragic death. They love a lady dying tragically.
I mean, yeah.
So she is sometimes in the modern day criticized for being a sort of passive figure. So like her tragic love and her life have been you'll see kind of revisited by modern writers to give her more control and more interiority of her own story. However, I would argue that she does have quite a significant amount of interiority, particularly when we're talking about Mallory's Mort to Arthur. But before we get to there, we have to talk about the stories that predate Le Mort to Arthur. Particularly, we are going to talk about the Vulgate cycle version of this story. So in the Vulgate cycle version of the story, she's not named Elaine. She's just referred to as the Maiden. Already, you can tell, kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I do want my maidens to have names, sort of a minimum requirement.
In this, she is a young, beautiful woman who is pure, chaste, and so devoted and loyal to the ones that she loves. So loyal, in fact, that she is willing to die for that love.
Sure.
She is often mentioned to be a healer in a lot of these stories, which is something that plays a very important role, especially in each of these tales. Her healing status is what gets her sort of close to Lancelot in a way that she might not have been afforded.
Mm.
And the Vulgate cycle, of course, is not the first time she is mentioned, but it is the first to sort of extend her role and place her into the context of the larger narrative, which Mallory then expands even further in Le Mort to Arthur. So the story starts with Elaine's father, whose name is Bernard, who is the Lord of Astolat. He is organizing a tournament in which Arthur and his knights have been invited to attend and participate.
Mm-hmm.
Classic, we're just throwing a tournament for, I don't know, some sort of party, some sort of event, right?
Julia, they didn't have iPhones. What else were they going to do all day?
Someone's birthday, someone got married, someone's getting turned into a knight. Who can say, really?
Who can say? Really thought you were going to say getting turned into a pig or something mystical about that. But no, you're right. Getting their knighthood is a more common thing.
So Lancelot, originally not planning to attend this tournament. He's got other stuff to do. He also doesn't need to prove himself. He's, as we know, the best of all knights, Amanda. But he is eventually convinced to do so, partially because he knows Guinevere is going.
Mm.
So he arrives before the tournament, before the other knights get there as well, and he visits this guy Bernard as well as his two sons and is in court with them. And so while he is in Bernard's court, Elaine, Bernard's daughter, sees Lancelot there, instantly enamored with him.
And Lancelot's like, yes, this happens every day. Welcome, another woman.
So she approaches him and begs a boon of him, though she doesn't specify what. Now, Amanda, first mistake.
First mistake. You never ask for a boon, you just get given one.
Or rather, you never agree to a boon without the specification of what the boon is, right?
It's not unlike the Fae. That is how you have to approach women of all kinds.
Precisely. That is fairy lore bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Lancelot, being this sort of chivalrous knight, agrees to the boon even though he doesn't know what the boon is.
What's he going to do? Say no?
Exactly. He's like, I'm a gentleman. I'm a man of chivalry. I must say yes if a woman asks for my favor.
Yeah, he's a professional favor giver to women and the needy.
Well, that's very funny because what Elaine does is she begs him to wear her favor while he competes in the tournament. So specifically wearing it on his sleeve and to, quote, do battle for the love of me.
Oh, wow.
Now, Lancelot's like, the Vulgate Cycles describes it as being displeased by the promise.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, the problem is, hey, I'm in love with Guinevere. Guinevere's going to be in the crowd. Guinevere's going to see me wearing the favor of another woman and be super pissed.
Yeah, that sucks. You don't go up to the, whatever, the star football player, quarterback, and have them wear your flannel, when they have a girlfriend who's watching from the stands or probably the cheerleading team.
Exactly.
Come on.
He agrees because, quote, it would be dishonorable for him not to do just what he had promised the young woman.
I mean, I get it. I'm with him.
The version of this tale portrays Elaine as being kind of clever about this. She's able to manipulate Lancelot and get what she desires out of him purely through wording her questions and requests very carefully.
Right.
Sort of portraying her as quite impressive in this regard. However, it also is oh, but Lancelot is conflicted about this thing where he's chivalry dictates that I should do this for this young woman. Also, chivalry dictates that I not betray my love, Guinevere.
Really in a pickle.
Lancelot decides that since he promised to fight for Elaine and to wear her favor, he will have to do so in disguise as to not upset Guinevere.
Okay, smart.
So what he does is he gets rid of his like very distinguishable shield, you know, like because normally when knights were fighting, they had their like coat of arms on their shield. And so he borrows a shield from Elaine's father, which is that of Elaine's one brother named Tor. It's either Tor or Torre. The tournament starts. Lancelot wins the jousting tournament while maintaining his disguise. He manages to defeat 40 of Arthur's knights who are competing as well.
Oh my God.
Which are like his brothers in arms, you know? However, during his final match, which is with Sir Bors, he is injured by the other knight's lance, and he has to be carried off the field by Elaine's other brother, whose name is Lavaine.
Like the cookie.
Elaine hears about Lancelot's injury. She hears that Lavaine is going to try to take him to this like hermit who is also like a former knight of the Round Table, who's like a healer and stuff. And she's like, nah. Daddy, can you tell Lavaine to bring Lancelot to my chambers? As you know, I'm skilled in the art of healing. I can nurse him back to health.
Oh my God, nothing sexier than nursing him back to health.
Hell yeah, dog. And that's going to be an important aspect of the story. So again, like you pointed out, the healer, big role in her story. It also sort of importantly puts Lancelot in her debt, right? Because she is healing him. She is nursing him back to health. She is bringing him back from the brink of death, right?
Yeah. And even though she kind of put him in an awkward position, he doesn't have like moral authority over her. Like he agreed to the boon. He fulfilled it, even though he was injured in the course of that fulfillment and perhaps wouldn't have been if he had been competing as himself as Lancelot. This is very wily, Julia. I didn't expect this level of intrigue.
Exactly. So the Vulgate cycle at this point describes Elaine as having, quote, stayed with him night and day, loved him so much, both because others spoke so highly of him and because she found him so handsome that she thought she could not go on living if she did not have his love.
But Daddy, I love him to the ultimate extent.
As she is nursing him back to health, she tries to inquire sort of whether or not he loves her in return. Again, using this sort of like wildly tricky language, right? In the same vein as how she convinced him to wear her favor during the tournament. So she specifically asks him if he thinks it would be, quote, ignoble for a knight to refuse if she asked for his love. So you'd be like, you know, if I asked a guy, do you want to date me? Wouldn't it be rude if he said no?
I mean, Julia, this is what I'm always saying, and yet it doesn't seem to help.
And then Lancelot's like, you can't use chivalry to trick me again. And so he goes, a knight would be ignoble if his heart were free to give. But also, you can't blame a guy if he, quote, didn't have sovereignty over himself.
Yes, he's already otherwise promised. His heart is otherwise occupied.
So Lancelot, again, is being like really cautious to essentially not lead this girl on, to kind of turn her down gently. Like the words he's using are not like, get away from me, or anything like that. Like he is still trying to maintain this chivalry.
Though it sounds like he's doing what I did in my sort of like first decade in the working world, which is like turn somebody down so politely in a professional context that they're like, oh, well, what if we move it to another day? Oh, like, well, what if I do this? Or like, oh, what if I pay you a little bit more? And I'm like, oh, no, but I actually just don't want to do it. Like you turn them down too politely where they think that you are like truly regretfully saying no just because of the circumstance.
Amanda, keep that in mind for when we get to the Mallory version of the tale. He's being like, I don't even have sovereignty over my own heart. How could I possibly give it to you, et cetera, et cetera. And so Elaine, absolutely smitten. When he doesn't enthusiastically return her affections, she says to him, quote, you'll soon cause my death. If you had told me this a little less directly, you would have let my heart languish in fond hope, and such hope might have let me live in all the joy and delight a love-stricken heart can know.
This is very intense. This is very lesbian coded. And I think Elaine is in need of some love from her girlfriends because, babe, we can't be showing ourselves out like this to a man.
Elaine be U-hauling. And Amanda, don't worry, there is another relationship that happens in this episode, not with this specific Elaine, but with the other Elaine, which I'm like, oh, are you guys friends? Or are you like friends?
I am truly now, Julia, picturing her floating down on like the Gowanus Canal on a U-Haul instead of a barge. We're making all kinds of headcanons over here.
All right. So Lancelot's like, uh-oh. And so he's like, you know what? I am indebted to you. Let me pay you for your service in healing me. And she is like disgusted by that. She's like, absolutely not. You're not into me. That sucks. I'm going to die now. And she like essentially dismisses him and tells him to leave the castle, which he does. Arguably, he feels a little bit guilty about how poorly she takes things.
Sure.
But he leaves. It takes 10 days after he departs for her to die of heartbreak.
Yikes.
Now, what is interesting about the Vulgate cycle and all the early versions of the cycle versus what happens in the Mallory story is that we don't get a lot of information about her like sort of final wishes. We only get, it happens off screen or off stage if you want, but we get the aftermath of it, right? And so we know that her body is put on a small ship or a barge. In her hands is clasped a letter, and it is sent down the river to arrive in Camelot. Now, we get there into Camelot, where King Arthur and Gawain see the boat float up to the castle with her body in it, with this letter on the body. So they read the letter.
Worst package of all time, Julia. I'll say it right now.
Pretty bad.
I've gotten some annoying letters. I've gotten jury summonses. I've gotten parking tickets. I've gotten, credit card statements I'd prefer not to look at. But this has got to take the cake.
So they read the letter. Mallory's the only one that gives us the full letter. Everyone else kind of like gives us what the implication of the letter is. And so they read the letter, which claims that she, quote, suffered the pain of death for the most valiant and yet the vilest man in the world, Lancelot of the Lake. Brutal. Girlfriend, brutal.
Wow. Using his full government name of Lancelot of the Lake.
Lancelot de Locke, yeah. Oof. So based on the letter and, the corpse of the young woman that's arrived here, Arthur feels plenty of sympathy for Elaine and becomes angry with Lancelot, proclaiming that, quote, the wicked thing he did to you is so terrible and so despicable that he should be condemned by all.
Huh. What do you make of this, Julia? Because I would assume the bros to back the bros, but also if they are truly here for full chivalry and this happened and a knight spurning a young woman led to her death, like, surely you ought to take the young woman's side.
I gotta be honest, Amanda, the first thing I thought was, bro, wait until you find out he's also fucking your wife.
Yeah, valid.
But no, you're totally right. I think Arthur is not necessarily willing to overlook the faults of his knights. Like, if someone fucks up, he will be like, y'all fucked up.
Which I think is a good quality of a leader.
Yeah, he's banished knights before for doing bad shit, and so this does not surprise me. Arthur then declares that they will, quote, inscribe her tomb to explain how she died, so that those who come after us will remember her.
I'm a little bit hesitant because I'm just picturing someone writing my name on their tomb inscription being like, yeah, Amanda did this, bitch.
Not only is he like, we're going to inscribe her tomb so that everyone remembers who she is, buries her in the main church of Camelot. He provides an elaborate funeral. And then the inscription he puts on her tomb is, here lies the maiden of Escalot who died for the love of Lancelot.
No.
Absolutely brutal.
They cited that source forever.
It's like perhaps one of the best breakup stories I've ever heard.
Like, folks, if we are feeling sorry for ourselves because our ex talked about us on Twitter or something, I beg us to find context in history and mythos because it could be so much worse.
Mallory takes all these details, adds even more details, expands her role, even gives her a specific name. Because remember, she's just the maiden in the Vulgate cycle. Here, we get the name Elaine. So there's also a reason why Le Morte d'Arthur is the most famous and the most popular medieval version of this story, is because she's like, I guess, slightly less tricky. I don't know if I would say aggressive. That doesn't feel like the right way to describe it. She also like never blames Lancelot for not returning her devotion in this version of the story, which makes her come across a lot more like pious and sympathetic. But then you remember that Mallory is just obsessed with Lancelot, so he would never make Lancelot look bad in his version of the story.
Yeah, it was like, well, of course he'd be instantly, obviously in love with him. So am I. I mean, so was Elaine. Julie, I'm really deep in Big Brother right now. And one way that like the fandom talks about characters on the show is that some of them are just inherently really rootable. Like it's easy to root for them. And that's what it sounds like the Mallory version of Elaine is.
Yes, I think so. And also the Mallory version of Lancelot. So much like in the earlier stories, Elaine sees Lancelot for the first time, becomes enamored. Mallory even describes her as someone who, quote, always beheld Lancelot in wonder, which, again, your crush is showing, Mallory. Let's be honest with each other.
For sure.
So she doesn't try to trick Lancelot at first, but rather she's very like direct in her ask. She's like, please wear my favor. And then later, after like the healing thing goes down, she's like, I want you to be my husband. If you don't want to be my husband, be my lover.
I mean, oofed.
Yes. I mean, hey, but very direct. Shout out to that.
Quite.
So again, the story sort of plays out similarly otherwise, though I want to note that with Lancelot, rather than him being sort of like brought directly to Elaine after his injury, like I said, like Lavaine, her brother, wanted to take him to this hermit who's going to be able to heal him. However, no one else knows where he has been taken. And so like all of a sudden Lancelot's missing for like several months and Arthur's like, Gawain, go find Lancelot. Where is he?
I can just imagine him after 2 months being like, I'm fucking done with this.
Like, what the fuck, dude? Gawain, go find him. Because it's like later revealed, like Guinevere recognizes that it's Lancelot after he's injured and like is like, oh, well, you know, he must be hurt and like we need to go find him. And Arthur's like, yeah, sure. Gawain, go find him. So what I think is interesting about Mallory's version of this story is that when Elaine finds out that Lancelot is still missing because Gawain shows up and is like, have you seen Lancelot? And everyone's like, no, we haven't.
Shit, no, yeah.
And then he just goes home, which is also crazy to me. Gawain just like goes back and he was like, also, yeah, I heard Lancelot's in love with this woman, Elaine. And Guinevere's like, fucking, what did you just say?
Fuck you, go back.
And so Elaine's like, well, he's missing. And my brother, we haven't seen him in a while either. I bet he took him to go to that hermit. So what's really interesting about this version is she ends up taking a much more active role and basically is the one that seeks out and eventually finds Lancelot and is able to heal what the hermit was not able to heal.
Cool.
So
I'm also really curious about the career arc of this retired knight turned hermit.
I don't know too much about him. Maybe we'll touch on him a little bit more in the future, but yeah, I'm kind of into it. Again, we got this sort of like healing process and stuff like that. Lancelot once again does not return her affections. And in this case, he offers her a bunch of alternatives, being like, well, no, I don't want to be your husband. She's like, okay, will you be my lover? He's like, no, I don't want to do that either. And she's like, okay, well, like, what can we be? And he's like, what if instead you married another man and I paid your dowry? And she's like, what?
Wild.
She's like, that's not why I want to do this.
That's not any of the options and don't involve a smooching. So no, thank you.
And so she turns him down and she says, and this made me laugh the first time I read it. She says, alas. Then she said, I must die for your love.
Oh, no. She goes respectfully, I'd rather die.
And lo, she does. Okay. So we get more details on her death in this story. Like I mentioned, traditionally at this point, her death sort of happens off screen or off stage. Knowing that her heartbreak will kill her, she dictates out a letter explaining what has happened to her, and then tells her father and her brother how they must arrange her body, saying that, quote, while my body is warm, let this letter be put into my right hand, and my hand bound tightly to the letter until I am cold.
Damn, dude.
She then asks for a mute oarsman to be the one to row her barge, which I actually really dig, because this way, Amanda, she gets to dictate how her story will be told between the letter and the fact that the man delivering her body to Camelot will not be able to provide some alternate version.
It is really taking control of your destiny in a way that is kind of like goosebump raising for me.
Exactly. So Mallory is very kind as to give us the whole letter, whereas we only get little snippets of it in previous stories. So here is the letter according to Mallory. Most noble knight, my lord Sir Lancelot, now death has made the two of us in opposition because of your love. And I was your lover, that men called the fair maiden of Astolat. Therefore unto all ladies I make my complaint, yet pray for my soul and bury me at least, and offer my mass penny. This is my last request. And a pure maiden I died, I take God to witness. And pray for my soul, Sir Lancelot, as you are without peer.
Damn. It really reminds me how like the word love means something different in Arthurian lore than I think it means today. Like there is such thing as a, non-sexual, not even almost romantic or capital R romantic, but like a just heart in, a whole heart, soul deep, just like I am for you. And there's no point in me living if the half of me that is you can't be with me. We have the idea of that a lot, but this is truly like the literalization, the typification of that kind of love.
You can see why we get such a romantic period out of these stories.
Yes.
It's incredible.
Very much so.
What's also really interesting to me is, first off, going back to this sort of dictating how her story is told. There's this whole Mallory makes a point of saying, oh, well, when Gawain got back, he was talking about all these rumors about this woman who was in love with Lancelot, and did Lancelot love her back, and back and forth and back and forth. And so by Elaine going to Camelot with her body with this letter, she's able to put to rest all of these rumors and is able to say, what you're saying didn't happen. This is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yeah, man. It's badass.
And what's also really interesting about her, to me at least, is how much of her story revolves around life and death and the role that love plays in that. So her love and her interest in Lancelot is what keeps him alive, but his inability or unwillingness to love her back and his eventual leaving is what leads to her death. And for me, that really highlights the sort of life and death stakes of romance in a lot of the Arthurian stories, because she is imperiled by something that not even the bravest knight can save her from, which is her own heartbreak.
Yeah, dude. And you wanna take her by the shoulders and be like, physician, heal thyself. Turn it inward, girl. Love thyself. I want to see you turn that healing inward. But that's not the point of this kind of faded love.
Exactly. So, Amanda, I think it should be unsurprising that these themes really tickled the Victorians.
Oh my God, Tennyson had a hard-on for the Lady of Shalott his whole fucking life.
Especially number one Arthurian stan, Tennyson. So he wrote 2 stories or poems about Elaine. There's one that's Elaine and Lancelot. It's from his Idylls of Arthur. However, the one that I'm going to talk about is The Lady of Shalott, which is from 1842.
Among the funnest poems to get drunk and say. I'm just going to put that out there. If you, like me, enjoy rhyming poems when drunk, this is a great one.
What's really interesting is his version of the story is actually fairly different from the stories that I've told so far, which is Tennyson portrays her as this lady who is, it's almost like a fairy tale in his mind, right? She is a lady who is isolated in a tower. Her whole life is taken up by weaving a, quote, magic web of colors gay, but she can only weave these tapestries out of reflections that she sees from her cursed mirror.
It's very Plato. It's very somebody got a copy of the Brothers Grimm. Tennyson had a fucked up little mind, man.
The curse is that if she ever really looks away from the mirror or looks out into the real world and sees Camelot, she'll die.
Sure will.
At this point, where we visit her in the story, she has been very discontented with this life. She states the first words we get from her are that she is, quote, half sick of shadows. Ugh.
Was that in my Neopets role-playing signature? Sure was, Julia.
I'm sure it was. That doesn't surprise me.
What shadows was I sick of at 13 and a half? We'll never know.
Who can say, possibly? This is her sort of lot in life until one day Lancelot rides by and she turns from the mirror for the first time. And I have the little Tennyson quote here.
Yes.
She left the web, she left the loom, she made 3 paces through the room. She saw the water lily bloom, she saw the helmet and the plume. She looked down to Camelot, out flew the web and floated wide. The mirror cracked from side to side. The curse is come upon me, cried the Lady of Shalott.
Fuck.
Yeah.
My girl. So hard, and much better rhymes than the first stanza of the poem, Julia, which again, cannot emphasize enough, rhymes water lily with daffodilly with water chili. Tennyson!
This is the Victorian era. We could do a little bit better than that, I think.
We could do a little better.
It's better than Byron, but still.
Good God.
In the story, the mirror cracks, the curse descends on her. She knows that she's going to die, so she finds a boat. She inscribes her name on the prow, and then she floats towards Camelot, singing as she does, knowing that she will die once she reaches the kingdom. And so the poem ends with Lancelot looking upon her face and commenting how lovely a face it is, and that God, in his mercy, will lend her grace.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Amanda, that's our first Elaine. We've got another important Elaine to talk about once we get back from our refill.
Let's go ahead and do it.
Hey, it's Julia, and welcome to the refill. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined our Patreon since our 500th episode sale. Especially thank you to our newest patrons, Sylvia, Rachel, Lucy, Mel, Denver, Meredith, Kelly, and Christy. You are all such wonderful folks for joining us over at patreon.com/spiritspodcast, where you're getting some cool rewards like ad-free episodes, bonus Urban Legends episodes every month, recipe cards for every single episode, and so much more. This month we had a review of our viewing of The Odyssey. So if you want to hear our thoughts on the Odyssey movie by Christopher Nolan, you can go and check out that at patreon.com/spiritspodcast. And you can join the ranks of our supporting producer level patrons like Alicia, Hannah, Scott, Anne, Matthew, Lily, and Will. And of course, our legend level patrons, Captain Jonathan Malachi Cosmos, Audra, Sarah, Beam Me Up Scotty, Morgan, Rico like Chibi Yokai, and Smoliv. And hey, I want to tell you about another show here at Multitude. This Guy Sucked. This Guy Sucked is a history podcast for haters by haters. Join historian Dr. Claire Aubin and a new expert every week to pull back the scholarly curtain on some of the world's biggest bummers. No dead person is safe, and the show's guests prove that the best part of understanding the past is criticizing it. From Charlemagne to Carl Schmitt, every episode gives listeners all the ammo that they need to win dinner table arguments over why history's main characters are actually kind of the worst. The Thomas Jefferson episode that came out recently, ooh boy, so good. You gotta listen to it. So check out This Guy Sucked. New episodes every Thursday wherever you listen to podcasts. And now let's get back to the show. Amanda, we are back, and the cocktail I have brought for us this week is inspired by another cocktail, which is called the Golden Lady, which is a combination of vodka, Lillet Blanc, and Benedictine with an orange twist. But I wanted to add another bit of like a complicated layer to this cocktail. Benedictine, I will say, also adds great complexity to any cocktail. I think it is an unappreciated liqueur that is up there with green chartreuse. If you can find Benedictine, definitely go pick it up at your local, not grocery store, your local liquor store. You have the time though, and you want to give this cocktail a little more complexity. We'll call it the Lady of Shalott, because I don't think there's a cocktail out there called the Lady of Shalott.
Now there is, babe.
I would say you should infuse your vodka with a like lighter herbal tea of some kind. Maybe a chamomile, maybe even like a dandelion tea, something that's got that sort of like slightly cereal weediness to it, but at the same time, a sort of like herbal flavor going on.
Very good.
Honestly, I think you can play with this one however you like add whatever you want to it. Have a fun time. Who am I to tell you what kind of tea to use to infuse in this bad boy? But I think in general, it's going to deliver a complex cocktail that will surprise you with how fast it hits you.
One, Julia, of the better phrases that I think Tennyson ever wrote is also in that poem, Lady of Shalott, where he describes the like courtiers and the crowd at Camelot as, quote, the well-fed wits of Camelot. I just think that that is such a good descriptor of like a sort of, castle grown, like, the easy and lazy. And so this seems like a wonderful cocktail to help kind of like digest and wake yourself up from being one of the well-fed wits at Camelot.
Ooh, yay. Either like an aperitif or a digestif, like you just had a great feast, but you got to keep going. There you go. Benedictine, great for that, honestly. Any sort of like the bitter liqueur in general is very good for your tummy, both before and after a meal.
Hooray.
Hooray. Up next, we are going to talk about our next Elaine, which is Elaine of Corbinick. I'm going to say at the top, little content warning. True to Arthurian form, this story features sexual assault in which someone disguises themselves as someone else in order to have sex with someone. We saw it with the Uther Pendragon story. We saw it with several other stories in Arthurian legend. It is an unfortunate trope that we often have to address when talking about Arthurian legend.
If that's something that you prefer to skip, go on ahead and do it. And we will see you next week.
So, Elaine, this Elaine, is another woman who is tied to Lancelot, because either apparently he has a type or Elaines are just in general very into Lancelots.
Julie, have you ever found yourself attracted to multiple people of the same name?
No.
Me neither. I kind of romanticize it in a way. Like I sort of wish that I was a person attracted to all, whatever. I'm trying to think of a cute non-binary name, etc. All Lexes.
It makes me think of an abundance of Catherines.
Yeah, for real. Shout out. One of the first books I checked out of the Merrick Avenue Middle School Library.
Dang, look at that. I just love that it's another Elaine. It's genuinely so funny to me. So this is also another incredibly important Elaine because she is the mother of one of the most important knights in Arthurian legend, which is Galahad.
Oh, yes.
So the sort of like TLDR version of her story, the shortened version of her story, is she is the daughter of King Pelles, who we have mentioned in previous episodes, who's also known as the Fisher King. So he and his line are essentially given the task of defending and keeping the Holy Grail until the time comes that like the most righteous and pure knight comes and receives the Grail, right?
I'm just fully picturing a kingfisher bird as the Fisher King, and I just want to invite the rest of you into that mental image.
Oh, that would be a really cute tattoo.
Right?
That would be good.
But like big.
Big kingfisher.
Big boy.
So, daughter of King Pelles, she is considered the fairest lady in the country. Most beautiful lady in the country.
Sure.
As you know, Amanda, typically that doesn't bode well for any woman who is considered the most beautiful of anything.
Bad idea to be the most exceptional of anything.
I'll also make a point that researcher Sally pointed out to me, which is the name Elaine is derived from the name Helen, as in Helen of Troy. And you'll kind of see parallels between Elaine's story and Helen's story.
Yo, Sally, you're so good for that. Also, patreon.com/spirits podcast, where we pay Sally to help Julia research one episode per month and get these incredible insights. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Sally. So we have Elaine, who is the most beautiful woman in the country. You know who's kind of jealous of that?
Well, Julia, I bet it's the person who wishes Lancelot would be in love with only her.
It would be Morgan Le Fay, actually.
Oh, shit. Even more dangerous.
Who also is kind of in love with Lancelot, too. She's the one that she's so jealous of the Guinevere Lancelot situation that she's the one that tells Arthur that the cheating is happening.
Aha.
So Morgan Le Fay, very jealous of Elaine. And so she places Elaine in a magical tub of boiling water.
Uh-oh.
Where she can only be freed by the best knight in the land.
That is pretty excruciating torture. And I'll just say it, Julia, I'm not a gender essentialist in almost anything, but I do think women come up with the most fucked up means of torture.
That's fair. That's fair. In my mind, I'm like, I feel like eventually your skin would get used to it. It'd be like getting into like just too hot of a hot tub.
Okay. And it's just kind of tingly, and then, you don't notice it anymore.
So she has to be freed by the best knight in the land. I bet you can guess who that is.
Oh, it's our man Lancelot.
So after 5 years of being stuck in that tub, Lancelot arrives and frees her from that torment.
Yikes.
Now, she instantly becomes smitten with him as her rescuer. And so she has her handmaiden and her sorceress bestie named Bryson help her trick Lancelot into sleeping with her, which is how she conceives Galahad.
Julia, is Bryson a man or a woman?
Bryson's a woman.
Ladies, I think it's very important to say, in every friendship between women, someone is the Elaine, someone is the Bryson. And I think it's very important that you text your BFF right now and make sure that between the two of you, you're on the same page about who's the Elaine, who's the Bryson. Cool?
And hey, sometimes it can switch up.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes someone could be a Bryson one day and then an Elaine the other day.
Roles are fungible. And it's important that one of you occupies one of those roles at all times.
So she gets her bestie and sorceress Bryson to help her out. She sleeps with Lancelot, and then Galahad is conceived. Lancelot consequently leaves, but they are reunited when Elaine visits Camelot some years later and tricks Lancelot into sleeping with her again.
Yikes.
Now, when Guinevere hears about this, she rejects Lancelot. That drives him mad. While he is mad, he travels to King Pelleas' castle, who, wants to make a fool of him, I think, because he slept with his daughter.
Yeah, that tracks.
But then Elaine recognizes that this mad knight is Lancelot, and so has him carried to the tower that the Holy Grail resides in, and he is cured by its power, but because he's not pure of heart, Amanda, he cannot take it for himself. So we'll get into the more nitty gritty details because she has a lot of nitty gritty details. But she is pretty crucial to a lot of the stories that we've talked about in Arthurian legend. But for whatever reason, probably the fact that she's doing a lot of trickery and stuff, she doesn't have quite as much staying power and doesn't get quite the attention that Elaine of Astolat seems to receive.
Yeah.
But are you ready to get into the nitty gritty of her? Because I love her.
Yes,
right.
Please. Yes,
so
please.
In the Vulgate cycle, doesn't play a super pivotal role. Really, the only true mention is she is the one that shows the Holy Grail to Lancelot, but because he isn't worthy, he's not able to claim it. But true to Mallory's love of Lancelot, he expands her role quite considerably in Le Morte d'Arthur. So Mallory suggests that King Pelleas was aware of a prophecy that his daughter would have a child with Lancelot, and then that child would be, quote, the most noblest knight in the world.
Wow.
Also, he would be the one to achieve the Holy Grail quest. He would be able to lead the country out of danger.
This is kind of a good take on the, you will have a consequential child or grandchild, which typically, in the sort of Oedipus direction is and they'll kill you. Be careful. But this one is your grandson's going to be the best baby of all time.
And they were like, fair enough. We love a good baby. It's Arthurian legend. We love a good baby.
Always, of course.
We love a pure baby that God sent us.
Pure baby, pure of heart. Not quite Jesus, but close.
Sometimes maybe the Antichrist, but then we send him to a monastery. Or we baptize him in time.
Just gotta quickly just dunk him.
All right. So as I mentioned before, Morgan Le Fay, jealous of her beauty, magically traps her in that boiling bath where she is freed by the best knight in the world, TM, Lancelot. When she is eventually rescued by Lancelot, Elaine absolutely just wants to bone down.
Sure.
But Lancelot, who we already know is in love with Guinevere, doesn't want to knowingly sleep with another woman.
Yes.
So she appeals again to her bestie, Bryson the sorceress, who gives Lancelot some wine and also gives Elaine a stolen ring of Guinevere's, which enchants him into thinking that Elaine is Guinevere.
Yeah, fuck.
So they bone down.
Yeah.
He awakens in the morning and then finds out that the woman in his bed is not Guinevere. So he draws his sword and threatens to kill her.
Yep.
And she's like, no, actually, I'm pregnant with your baby.
That sucks, man. Man, some old-fashioned assault and entrapment. Yeah.
Yep. So he sheathes his sword.
More ways than
kisses
one.
her instead.
Sorry, I had to.
He sheathes his sword, he kisses her instead, and then he leaves, and Elaine gives birth to Galahad in her father's castle 9 months later.
Tough.
Once Galahad is born, Elaine then comes to attend a feast at Camelot in Arthur's court, but Lancelot does not acknowledge her presence, especially because Guinevere is present. This is like Sincere treating Amora after she gets brought back from Casa Amor.
Yep.
He's like, Elaine who? I've never met that woman in my entire life. I don't think we've ever had a conversation.
She certainly doesn't have my child. Mm-mm.
She is slighted by that, obviously.
Damn.
So she again complains to Bestie Bryson, who is like, girl, don't worry. I'm going to make sure that he sleeps with you again.
All right, I take back my earlier enthusiasm for Bryson. She is really doing some second-degree sexual assault here.
Oh, yeah. No, listen. She's a girl's girl, but she's doing women's wrongs.
She's a girl's girl through a mirror darkly. And while we support women's rights and wrongs, we stop that support when it assaults somebody else.
So she enchants Lancelot again, and she leads him to Elaine's bedroom, telling him that it is Guinevere that is calling him to her chambers, and he sleeps with her again. But at the same time, and this is messy as hell, Guinevere had actually been calling Lancelot to her chambers and is pissed off when he never shows up.
Yikes.
So she goes looking for him. She goes to his bedchamber, finds out that he's not there, but then like through the walls, hears him talking in his sleep and then finds him in Elaine's bed. Guinevere, obviously pissed, and then tells him that she never wants to see him again.
I mean, I get it from her perspective. She doesn't know he's enchanted.
Yeah, and also, stones, glass houses, Guinevere.
Yeah, easy to forget she is fully carrying on an affair. But,
yep,
she
is fully married to another man. So this dismissal from the love of his life, Guinevere, drives Lancelot mad, and he jumps out a window. He's fine.
Oh.
It's like the first or second floor. It's a low window.
Okay.
And then he runs off into the wilderness.
Oh, Lancelot. What a man of big feelings.
Elaine, meanwhile, confronts Guinevere and is like, my queen, you're treating Lancelot too cruelly. You're the reason he's mad now. And Guinevere's like, who are you to tell me all this? And so she storms out, Elaine storms out and leaves the court.
Yeah.
Time passes. Lots of quests happen in between. Arthur, again, is like, where is Lancelot? Someone go find him.
We keep losing him. Someone get an air tag. I'm tired of this shit.
We have to start air tagging all of the guys' shields and armor.
Yes.
So we gotta find out where they are. So Arthur eventually sends out Sir Percival and Sir Ector to go and find the missing Lancelot. We pick up the story where Elaine is in her garden one day and is just like looking at her rose bushes, turns around, there's a mad Lancelot just there. Standing in her garden. And she's like, weird, but maybe in his madness, he sought me out, the true love of his life. Elaine, delusional. Don't do that.
Baby Delulu, come on.
So she's like, okay, I know where the Grail is. I know it has healing properties. Maybe this will help. So she brings Lancelot to the tower in which the Grail is held. That cures him.
Mm-hmm.
He regains control of his mind and decides, he's like, well, I'm embarrassed. Guinevere said she never wants to see me again. No one's come to find me. So I guess I will just like take up a false name and I'm going to join Elaine on the Isle of Joy. And we are going to spend several years in like not quite wedded bliss.
Huh. It's giving Odysseus.
I was about to say, it's very Odyssey of him.
Very Circe.
So eventually he is found there by Percival and Ector, who are like, Arthur's been looking for you. You got to come back to Camelot.
My man, you have a whole life. You took an oath.
So he agrees to return, but he's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my now 15-year-old son to court with me.
Sure.
So he takes Galahad with him and he makes him a part of Arthur's court. At the same time, he and Guinevere are reunited, and Arthur is like, wow, that Elaine woman made you go mad, huh, Lancelot? Wild. Anyway, glad you're back.
Please, let's not interrogate your relationship with my wife.
No one corrects him. Nope. And we know how that goes.
Yeah.
So again, that's sort of the end of that Elaine's story. And I do think that this is another very interesting Arthurian character who is full of like complexities and contradictions, right? So she is someone who tricks Lancelot into having sex with her when, you know, he never would have had sex with anyone who wasn't Guinevere. But she also is very much described and considered a sort of like holy vessel by the story.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's like, does the story want us to judge her actions when it results in the birth of Galahad? Like, that is also very important to the plot.
Yes, and Galahad is portrayed by Mallory as being this sort of like savior figure, right? He is the vessel by which the Grail will be delivered.
Yeah, he's Christ-like.
A lot of the stories and the tellings of this story make it feel like it's like God's will, which does make it feel a little wild. And also like that's ignoring the parallels of Arthur's own conception, where his father posed as another man to sleep with another man's wife so that Arthur could be born and be the future king of England.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And like a lot of stories that embody, you know, virtues or sins, we're almost not given a lot of interiority. Like these characters have very straightforward motivations, and they're almost like, you know, like automatons where like you'll set the mission and they'll just pursue it at any cost, which is why I kind of prefer the first version of Elaine that we heard about, where, you know, we are getting some more of those like Mallory details about somebody who is trying to like quabble with and like have a complex understanding of her own needs. But it's just such an interesting mode of storytelling as people in 2026 who are so used to thinking about complex characters with rich inner lives and contradictions that are anti-heroes, just like all of us are in our own brains. Lancelot's no anti-hero. He's that. And like both of these Elaines really stand in for so many fears that I'm sure people had at the time and in the many, many retellings since about what it is to be faithful, to be a woman, to be in love, to be chivalrous, to be devoted, and how far is too far in service of God and country.
I also really like both Elaines as parallels to each other when they're pitted against the character of Lancelot, who we talked about this in the Lancelot episode, is another character who is like complicated, full of contradictions. Like he tries so hard to be the perfect knight, but he never can achieve that because he is in love with this woman that he cannot be in love with. And so what I love about, you know, the Lady of Shalott version of Elaine is she is a woman who is like, I'm in love with this man and he cannot be with me. And so that in her own way, like makes her so like pious and makes her so like chaste and pure. And also we have this version of Elaine who is like, she has to be this vessel in order to bring about essentially the savior of the story. And also the way she has to go about it is so wrong. And like, she's like committing this sort of like adulterous affair sort of situation, much like Lancelot is. And I think it's really fascinating to kind of like pit these two together, not against each other, together.
Julia, I never would have gotten this deep in the several Elaines of Arthurian folklore without you. So thank you very much for going on this tour and giving me an excuse to yell about Tennyson.
I have one more Elaine before we leave. All right. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that the first Elaine that we ever talked about on the podcast is the one who birthed Lancelot himself. His mom's called Elaine.
No way!
So that adds a fun little mommy issues twist into all these other Elaines, doesn't it?
Oh, yikes. Really give me some Electric Complex chaser on this, Julia. You can't give me the Electric Complex as my digestif malort here.
I simply must. So you might remember she was the wife of King Ban from a kingdom that was known as Benwick. Benwick gets conquered by a guy named King Claudius, during which King Ban is killed by heartbreak because his land was conquered. And so this Elaine is fleeing. She's got a infant. In some stories, he was like a premature birth too, which is the whole thing. And so eventually she takes Lancelot and she gives him to the Lady of the Lake for safekeeping to raise him away from like the violence of the mortal lands, right? And as a result to that, after she gives Lancelot up, she becomes known as the Queen of Great Sorrows. Incredible title, first off.
Wow.
And then goes into hiding as a nun along with her sister.
Fascinating. What a chaser. Complex. Gives me a weird taste in my mouth, Julia. A good digestive.
Excellent. Well, Amanda, I'm so glad you enjoyed the Elaines. I think they were really fun and really interesting to talk about. I think this was like a diversion from like the big characters of the Arthurian legends, but I also think it's an important diversion.
Me too. And Julia, I just want you to remember that the next time I offer a wild ass, morally indefensible solution to a minor problem you have, just remind me.
Stay creepy.
Stay cool.
Later, Saters.